Working with resources. So far in this course, we've mainly talked about tasks because these are the elements that drive your project forward. However, in order to complete tasks, you need resources. Resources, by definition, are costs associated with tasks. A resource can be a person, equipment, materials, or even a fee. In this lesson, we're going to learn about resources in Project 2013 and how to apply them to your project. You add resources to your project, not task by task, but by filling out a resource information form located within the project. On this form, you'll list the resource name, the rate per hour or cost per use, and the availability. You can also add other information such as the work group they belong to or an email address. Remember, a resource can be a person or a thing. If it is a person, you can add their name or just add a reference to them so that you know who they are. An example would be labeling a person as an engineer. You can even group resources that work together. Knowing the definition and understanding it is pretty simple. The good news for you is that adding resources is just as easy. To add a resource, open the resource sheet by going to the View tab and then clicking on the Resource Sheet button. You should now see the resource sheet. We already have a resource listed, so let's ignore that for now. Instead, double-click on a blank cell in the Resource Name column. You'll see the Resource Information dialog box appear. Fill in the resource name in the Resource Name field. Choose the type of resource they are in the Type field, such as work, material, or cost. In the Initials field, type in the initials or abbreviation for the resource. Enter any other information you need for this resource. In the Group field, you would enter something if this resource is part of a group. In the Material field, which is only available for material type resources, you might enter how much of the material or other important information. Click OK to save this resource. It's now added to your resource sheet. There are 3 different types of resources in Project 2013. They are work, material, and cost resources. Let's take a look at what each of these 3 means to make it easy for you to decide what types of resources you're using for your project. Work resources can be reassigned to different tasks, but they can't be depleted. A box of nails would be depleted, so it's not a work resource. However, an employee or contractor could be assigned to multiple tasks, but wouldn't be depleted. Material resources do not use working hours, and they can be depleted. They have unit costs. Examples of material resources are wood and books. A cost resource might be a shipping charge. You can use a cost resource to apply a cost every time you use the resource. To add the cost rate for a work resource, open the resource sheet, then click on the resource name in the resource name column. Go to the STD rate or standard rate and OVT rate or overtime rate fields. Enter in the standard and overtime rates for this resource. That said, there may be times when one rate is not going to cover all the times you use for this resource. For example, you might want to charge a different rate for volume work, the type of work, or the location of the work. You can make it so you can set different rates by using the Rate Table feature. To use the Rate Table feature, double-click on a resource name to bring up the Resource Information dialog box. Go to the Cost tab, and then click on the A tab. Enter an effective date for when the rate changes take effect. In the standard rate and overtime rate columns, enter the rates. If you want to enter additional sets of pay rates for this resource, click the B tab and other tabs and repeat the steps that we just went through. Click OK when you're finished. To enter a per use cost instead of a rate for a work resource, go to the resource sheet. Go to the View tab and click on the downward arrow below Tables in the data group. Select Entry. In the Cost/Use field, under the Cost/Used column in your resource sheet, enter in a cost. To enter a cost rate for a material resource, go to your resource sheet. Click on the View tab and click on the downward arrow below Tables in the data group. Select Entry, just as we did before, if it's not already selected. In the Resource Name field, select a material resource or create a new one. You can see in this example I don't have one, so let's create a new one. Make sure the material is selected in the Type column. In the Standard Rate field, enter in a rate. To enter a fixed cost, use the Cost/Use field as we did earlier. Some tasks will have a fixed cost. This means that no matter how many resources you assign to them, they're going to cost the same to accomplish. You do not have to assign resources to these type of tasks. Let's learn how to apply fixed costs to tasks, then we'll show you how to add costs for hourly resources. To add a fixed cost to a task, in the Gantt chart view, go to View, then in the Tables section, select the cost entry. You can see the table has changed in the Gantt chart view. Click on the fixed cost cell for the task you want to apply a fixed amount, and then enter the amount. It's that easy. To assign hourly rates to resources, go to the Resources sheet by clicking the Resources sheet button in the View tab. Click on the standard rate for the resource you wish to add to a cost. Then type a dollar amount. If you're using a rate other than hours, type a slash after the dollar amount and then add a unit such as month or minute. Once you have your resources added to the resource sheet, you can start assigning them to tasks. Perhaps the easiest way to assign a resource to a task is to use the Assign Resources button under the Resources tab in Gantt chart view. So now I'm in the Gantt chart view. First, I'll need to go back to the Tables section and go to Entry to see the dates. Now click on the Resources tab. To assign a resource to a task, click on a task to select it. You only have to click it once. Click the Assign Resources button. You'll see this window here. Select the resource that you want to use from the resource list options. Next, add the units of the resource that you will be using. If it is a work resource, the default value is 100%. A material resource is assigned in units such as gallons, consulting sessions, yards, or tons. When you assign it to a task, you put how many units of the resource will be devoted to the task. If it is a cost resource, it incurs a set cost every time you assign it. For example, if you have a resource called licensing fee and give it a cost of $100, it would be 1 unit when you assign the resource, or 100%, to reflect one charge of $100. Remember, units are written in percentages. If you need to add more resources for the task, repeat these steps until all are added. Click Assign, and then click Close to save the assignments. You can see their name has now appeared in the Resource Names section. By default, Effort-driven scheduling is turned off in Project 2013. This means that no matter how many resources you assign to a task, the duration of a task will stay the same. However, with fixed unit or fixed work task types, the duration should change if the resources affect the time it takes to complete it. For example, the task is to paint the office. You've listed a 2-day duration. However, you hire 2 painters to paint the office. These 2 painters are listed as 2 different resources on your resource sheet in Project 2013. Having 2 painters reduces the duration of the project to 1 day. They will get 2 days of work completed in just 1 day. In order to make scheduling the task work along with these resources, click on the task and then use the Auto Schedule button found in the Schedule group under the Task tab. This changes it to an auto-scheduled task instead of manually scheduled in your task table in the Gantt chart view. You can see the scheduling icon in the Task Mode column. Manually scheduled tasks have an icon that looks like a pushpin, as you can see here. Next, double-click on the task to open the Task Information dialog box. Click on the Advanced tab. Now put a check in the box beside Effort Driven. Then click OK. We've talked about the resource calendar earlier in this course. Your calendar shows working times, and your resource calendar will show when the resources are available and the times you've scheduled to use them. It is very critical to the completion of your project and the timeliness that you keep your calendar up to date. But now that we know this about the calendar, it is time that we examine how it actually works. You create your resource calendar from the base calendar, choosing standard, 24 hours, or night shift. After you specify the base calendar you want to use, you can specify the exact working hours. You can also select specific days when the resource is not available. Maybe, for example, your engineer is not available on Wednesdays. To modify a working time for a resource and modify a calendar, double-click on the resource name to bring up the Resource Information dialog box. Click on the General tab and click on the Change Working Time button. This window will now appear. Click on the day that you want to change on the calendar. Then click the Work Weeks tab. Now click a blank row and enter a name for the exception. Now you press Tab, and the Start and Finish days will now appear in the Start and Finish columns. Now click the Details button. Choose either working or non-working times. This means you'll select whether you're going to specify working or not working times for this resource. If you've selected set days to these specific working times, you can enter the times in the From and To fields. Click OK when you're finished. And click OK on the next box, and then on the resource information sheet. Your changes will now be saved.